There you are, folks. We're just chatting here in the bus, and Jim was telling us a little bit about growing up, but he celebrates his birthday this month. But my father celebrated his birthday in June, and he's 90. But Jim, you remember growing up during the dance hall days?
Very much so.
They were good days.
They were great days. The only thing was that emigration out of Ireland, I was friendly with a lot of young people, including my brother and sister, both went to England because there was no jobs here. I'm of an era when I remember the 26 counties had a population which had dropped to, I think, 2.6, 2.8 million. It's nearly doubled again.
Yeah.
I mean, the people say times aren't good now, and I say, Christ Almighty, go back to the Second World War, and go back. All these houses now being built in the country. Most people then lived till certainly the beginning of the 50s in bad thatched 3-room cottages, a lot of them leaking. There was a lot, often an unfortunate woman with 5 or 10 children with no water, no heat, no toilets, no cooking facilities. And if you ever heard of a settle bed, there'd be 3 or 4 of them in the kitchen, sometimes sleeping head to tail in a settle bed. In fact, I collected a settle bed or two just to have them, because people wouldn't believe. And when I say to my grandchildren, I ploughed or mowed with horses, they laugh at me and say, oh, grandfather, you're fairly skinning it now. You never did that at all.
They said you what?
You never did that at all. What? You're telling us lies, that I never worked horses or never cut turf. Well, I did.
Now, the dancing days, as I said, they were a busy time. It started really, in the 50s, was it?
In the 50s. The dancing was going, I would say, full blast. It was really operational by 56. It's really, there was the carnivals. If you remember the carnivals, there was a few guys who ram up those tents with a timber floor in them in a few hours, and they were mainly run to raise funds, often for the parish.
Correct.
And every year at a certain time of year, each parish would have a carnival, and then actually, well, there was a hall in Strokestown, but they built a parochial hall in Alfin, which was very, very good. And then Jim Rillans came home from Australia, and he and his 2 brothers, Joe and Albert, they had a small little hall in Ruski, and then they built a bigger hall there, and then they expanded. They had Skyland and Starland and what they called the one here, Joe?
Lakeland.
Lakeland, yes. So they had one in Moat. They had a stack of, but by the kind of, I got married in 62, it was still going strong, but moving towards the 70s, things like it started to go head more in nightclubs and discos and the devil knows what. It's like I was asking some fella said to me, young fella said to me there a few days ago, was I on Instagram or something else? 2 or 3. And I said, what are you talking about? He started to explain. Well, he says, now one of these is for people from about 15 to 25.
Right.
And the next one is for 35 to 50. I said, oh, what about me? I says, your history. But there's 2 things. I don't know what they are. What are they?
Well, they're like
Instagram and Facebook are the 2,
They're like your own television on your phone.
Yeah.
And that's what we're chatting on, and it's a great facility, I feel, because we're collecting lots of stories from different people. But do you remember going to see my father and Joe anywhere? Do you have one story there?
There is no doubt at all. I did many places because they played far and wide. I danced to Joe Dolan and the band more than once, more possibly than 10 times.
Good man.
They were playing in Moat.
They played in Moat a good few times.
Yes.
And would you have met your wife there at the dance?
I met my wife's mother, was from nearly the same townland where my father came from. And she her mother married a man down in Kejo.
Okay.
If you know where that is, that's down at Origna.
Right.
And it's just touching the border of Leitrim, but it's in Roscommon.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a student, and I was a sort of a half farmer trying to get into the motor business to improve get my hands on a few pound that I might be able to get an extra bit of land, because the land wasn't big enough to run the sort of a big old house my father had bought that no one wanted. And I ended up anyway. The motor business took over, but I kept farming.
Yeah.
I'm after renewing my herd number.
Good
I'm
man.
putting
Now,
it in
tell
my
us-
name and James's name, and I still go out and shuffle around with sheep and that. I used to have in the early days a lot of sheep. And with regard to Strokestown, it's only fair to say that the National Farm Museum, Luke Dodd, a cousin of mine who had gone through university in the history of art, was it? And he had got a scholarship to America. And when he was a student, just after buying it, there was a picture made in Strokestown Park called Anne Devlin. And Luke came just to keep an eye on the place, because at that time we had bought the contents of what the Mahans didn't want, because the Mahans agreed. The auctioneers, of course, went mad. They wanted an auction of everything. But Luke made a huge contribution towards the National Family Museum. There's no shadow of doubt about that. So I get all the credit, but Luke put a lot of sweat into doing what happened in Strokestown and what it became.
Now, getting back to talking about your wife, you met your wife's mother. How was the connection there? Did your wife's mother introduce your...
No. You see, there were neighbours, and I had a brother who was a student in Dublin, and he would know all these locals. It was like around Mullingar or anywhere.
Yeah.
He'd have known all the neighbours or anyone that was studying in Dublin, because at that stage there was no free education, and you had to either get a scholarship.
Right.
You know, my wife got a scholarship to do. She was doing medicine, which was she got a very good marks, in other words, in her leaving. And she was in university, and of course Peter, my brother, who's deceased, knew her. And there was an aunt of hers lived, a sister of our mother's, lived about 4 or 5 miles away from us, and I'm sure you heard of maypoles.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, well, maypoles were dancing in the open. You wouldn't want to be out on a wet night. The only people that were covered were the musicians. Now, there'd be 2 or 3 musicians. They wouldn't be in the class of Joe Dolan or the band, I'll tell you, but there'd be local fellas.
Right.
Playing, there was one fella, he was on the sax, and another fella on the fiddle, and that was about it.
Right.
But, of course, the younger crowd used to go there, so I often met Caroline or Adeline there, very often met Adeline at that.
Right.
And I met her then because when I got in the motor business, we'd be bringing cars up and down from Dublin mainly. We were at various things, and we were at these old, bringing in from England, these old small TVO Ferguson tractors. We were bringing up cattle and down tractors. So we kind of actually, I met her coming down Stephen's Green by pure accident. I was going in to get something, and I met her by the merest accident. And actually, I was going out with another girl at the time.
Oh, well, look, I'm going to have to let you go here because
Easy,
there's
you're
more
now,
people
yeah.
to speak to you, and I'm going to have to wrap it up. So once again, great chatting. We talk all day. Look, goodbye now, folks. Thanks,
Well,
Jim.
now, thank you
Happy
very
birthday
much.
to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Jim Callery. Happy birthday to you. Hip hip.
Woo! Hooray!
Bye.